My phone rang on that Thursday night, and Rebecca's voice carried that familiar honeyed tone she always used when orchestrating something. This time, however, she wasn't requesting anything. She was boasting. "Tomorrow's my wedding day, Sarah." Exciting, isn't it? "Oh, and by the way, I've emptied your savings account. Every last penny of that $92,000. Think of it as your wedding present to me. Thanks a bunch." The call ended abruptly before I could utter a word. I remained standing in my kitchen, still gripping the phone, surrounded by silence where my sister's voice had just been. $92,000. Half a decade of meticulous saving. Every bonus check, every tax return, every dollar I hadn't spent on vacations or designer clothes or anything beyond necessities. Vanished in an instant. And what was my reaction? I burst out laughing. Not a bitter or hysterical laugh, but a genuinely surprised chuckle that bounced off my kitchen walls. Because Rebecca had just committed the most catastrophic error of her existence. She assumed I would crumble, weep, perhaps plead for the money's return. She expected me to do what I'd always done, absorb the impact and carry on. But Rebecca was unaware of something crucial. She didn't realize that her entire $45,000 fantasy wedding, every supplier, every bloom, every appetizer was on the verge of collapse, and I held the power to prevent it. I'm grateful you're here with me. Please show your support for this video and stay with my narrative until the conclusion and tell me which city you're tuning in from. That way, I can track how widely my story spreads. My name is Sarah Bennett, and at 35 years old, I believed I understood my family dynamics. I worked as a senior financial analyst at an investment company in Denver, Colorado. The type of professional who reviewed her bank statements every Sunday morning and maintained detailed spreadsheets tracking her financial objectives. I resided alone in a modest downtown apartment, operated a practical vehicle, and had precisely one costly indulgence: premium coffee. Everything else was directed toward savings. Everything else was dedicated to my aspiration of purchasing my first home. A charming bungalow in the Highlands neighborhood had captured my attention 6 months prior. 3 bedrooms, a welcoming porch, a backyard spacious enough for gardening. The listing price was $320,000, and I had finally accumulated sufficient funds for a substantial down payment. $92,000 to be precise. I knew that figure by memory. Now I stared at my banking application, watching the screen verify what Rebecca had announced so casually. Savings account balance, $4,723. 3 distinct withdrawals over the previous week, $30,000, $35,000, $27,000, all transferred to an account belonging to Rebecca M. Bennett. I placed my phone down carefully, as if sudden movements might cause it to detonate. My hands remained steady. That surprised me. I assumed they should be trembling, but instead I felt something cold and crystalline settle over me. The same concentration I experienced when examining a complex financial analysis. Evaluate, analyze, execute. That was my training. That was my expertise. The method returned to me in fragments. 3 years earlier, Rebecca had contacted me sobbing. "Sophie's hospitalized. Sarah. High temperature. They're conducting tests. I'm terrified. I can't reach my bank account. Some security lockdown. Can you add me as an authorized user on yours? Just temporarily. Just until I can handle the medical expenses." I hadn't hesitated. Sophie was my niece, 7 years old then, and I would have crossed fire for that child. I accessed my bank that same evening and granted Rebecca authorized user status on my savings account. The emergency access was meant to be short-term. The emergency itself proved to be a minor fever treated with children's medicine. Sophie was discharged that same afternoon, and Rebecca never removed her access from my account. I never thought to verify. I never considered removing her authorization myself because she was my sister. Because family trusts family. Because I was, as Rebecca had once messaged a friend, an easy mark. I'd witnessed that text message 6 months ago accidentally when I borrowed Rebecca's phone to photograph Sophie at her birthday celebration. A notification had appeared from someone named Kelly. "So, did you get the money from her yet?" And like a fool, I'd scrolled upward. My sister is such an easy mark. She constantly feels guilty about being more successful. She believes being the good sister means being a pushover. I'd set the phone down, captured the photo, returned home, and quietly removed Rebecca from my checking account. But my savings account, the one containing $92,000, I'd overlooked. One account, one mistake. That's all it required. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Your sister is so excited about the wedding. Don't you dare spoil this for her, Sarah. She deserves joy after everything she's endured." I stared at the message. No greeting, no inquiry about my well-being, no recognition that I existed as anything beyond a supporting character in Rebecca's narrative. Just an instruction to remain in my place, to avoid causing problems, to be the good sister, the responsible one, the one who always understood. But here was what Mom didn't know. Here was what Rebecca didn't know. 6 months ago, when Rebecca became engaged to Michael Anderson, she approached me with a proposal. She wanted a dream wedding. Rosewood Manor venue, premium catering, live orchestra, the complete package. Total budget, $45,000. The issue was, Rebecca had no finances, maxed credit cards, no savings, a job she abandoned every 6 months. So she requested if I would serve as her financial guarantor for the vendor agreements. "Please, Sarah, I'll reimburse you from wedding gifts. Michael's family is wealthy. I just need someone to sign the contract so the vendors will collaborate with me. You understand how these arrangements work." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Every vendor contract, the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the DJ, all were in my name as guarantor. All deposits and payments flowed through an account I controlled. Rebecca had placed my name on everything, told the vendors I was her silent investor, her generous sister, compensating for years of absence. She constructed her entire wedding on my signature, and now she had stolen my savings, believing she'd taken everything from me. But she'd actually provided me with the kill switch. I calculated the numbers. $92,000 stolen from me. $45,000 wedding dependent on my approval. Without my consent, not a single vendor would proceed. The venue wouldn't unlock its doors. The caterer wouldn't deliver the food. The florist wouldn't arrange a single rose. I retrieved my phone, not to call Rebecca, not to plead or beg or ask why. I opened my contacts and located the number for Mountain Bank's fraud department. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday evening. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at 4:00 p.m. That provided me approximately 40 hours. The automated system placed me on hold, then transferred me, then placed me on hold again. Finally, a human voice. "Mountain Bank Fraud Department. How may I assist you?" My voice emerged calm, controlled, almost pleasant. "I need to report unauthorized transactions on my account, and I need to freeze all linked accounts immediately. Every single one." I gazed at the photograph on my desk while I waited for confirmation. Rebecca and me, arms around each other, ages 8 and 11, both smiling, both innocent, both believing we'd always be on the same side. I turned the photo face down. "I'm sorry, Rebecca, but you brought this upon yourself." The hold music played softly through my phone speaker while I waited for the bank's fraud department to process my request. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee cooling beside me. The apartment felt different now, charged with something I couldn't quite identify. Outside my window, Denver's skyline sparkled against the night sky. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. None of them knew that my world had just shifted on its axis. I found myself wondering, not for the first time, how we arrived here. When did my sister become someone capable of this? When did I become someone who allowed her? To understand that, you must understand the Bennett family. You must understand how we were constructed. My father, Richard Bennett, was an insurance adjuster who believed that peace at any cost was preferable to conflict at any price. He spent his career assessing damage and calculating settlements, and he brought that same energy home. Avoid the confrontation, smooth things over, write the check if it makes the problem disappear. My mother, Diana Bennett, had been a beauty queen in her youth, first runner-up for Miss Colorado 1978. She never quite recovered from not winning, and she poured all her unrealized ambitions into her firstborn daughter. Rebecca was stunning from the moment she arrived, dark hair and green eyes, and a smile that made strangers pause on the street. I came along 3 years later, quieter, plainer, more interested in books than beauty pageants. From the beginning, we occupied different roles in the family story. Rebecca was the star. I was the stage crew. The hierarchy established itself early and never shifted. Rebecca's bedroom was the large one at the front of the house. Pink walls and princess canopy and a closet full of clothes. Mine was the converted den at the back, practical and small. Mom called it cozy. Rebecca's birthday parties were elaborate productions with themes and catered food and professional photographers. Mine were family only. Cake from the grocery store. Be grateful for what you have. When I inquired about the difference once, Dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Sarah, you're so mature. You understand we have to make choices. Rebecca needs more. You've always been the strong one." I was 10 years old when I learned what being the strong one really meant. Rebecca wanted dance lessons, the expensive kind, competition level with costumes and travel and coaches. I wanted piano lessons from Mrs. Henderson down the street, $20 a week. The family budget could only accommodate one. Dad sat me down with that same hand on my shoulder, that same apologetic smile. "Sarah, you understand, don't you? Rebecca has such talent. This could be her future. You're so responsible. You'll find other ways to express yourself." I nodded. I always nodded. Rebecca got her dance lessons. I got nothing. And I learned that being responsible meant being overlooked. The summer I was 16, I overheard a conversation that crystallized everything. Mom was on the phone with Aunt Patricia in the kitchen, and I was in the hallway, frozen, unable to move. "Sarah's fine," Mom said, her voice carrying that dismissive tone I knew so well. "She's the strong one. Rebecca needs more support. She's sensitive." I stood there in that hallway, understanding for the first time that strong didn't mean admired. It meant she can handle being neglected. It meant we don't have to worry about her. It meant invisible. Rebecca's trajectory through life followed a predictable pattern. She was homecoming queen in high school, dated the quarterback, got written up in the local paper for her charity work, which consisted of one afternoon at a soup kitchen with a professional photographer present. I was on the honor roll, captain of the debate team, working part-time at a bookstore to save for college. At my graduation, Mom spent the entire dinner talking about Rebecca's new boyfriend. When Rebecca was 19, she crashed her car driving drunk after a party. No one was hurt, thankfully, but the car was totaled. Dad bought her a new one within a month. "She learned her lesson," he said. At 16, I was still taking the bus to my job at the bookstore. When Rebecca dropped out of college after 2 semesters because it just wasn't for her, my parents nodded sympathetically and welcomed her back home. When I earned a full scholarship to University of Colorado, Denver, and graduated with honors in finance, Mom asked if I could help Rebecca with her credit card bills. Rebecca's first marriage happened when she was 28. His name was David Sullivan, a good man with a steady job in IT and a gentle disposition. He adored her. They met at a party, got engaged in 4 months, married in 8. I was the maid of honor, and when the wedding budget ran $15,000 over, I covered the difference. "It's family," I told myself. That's what family does. The marriage lasted 3 years. By the end, David looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. Rebecca quit her job 6 months after the wedding to focus on being a wife, which meant shopping and spa days and what she called retail therapy. David's credit cards maxed out one by one. When their daughter Sophie was born, I hoped motherhood might ground my sister. Instead, Rebecca hired a nanny and resumed her spending. David filed for divorce after discovering $40,000 in credit card debt Rebecca had hidden from him. But Rebecca was faster. She spun a story about financial abuse, about a controlling husband who hid money and monitored her every purchase. The family believed her. They always believed her. I paid for Rebecca's divorce lawyer. I paid for her apartment deposit after she moved out. I paid for Sophie's clothes and school supplies when Rebecca said she was struggling. The total over 2 years came to roughly $25,000. She's my sister, I told myself. She's Sophie's mother. What choice do I have? The fake emergency happened 3 years before this night. Rebecca called me sobbing, saying Sophie was in the hospital with a high fever. She couldn't access her bank accounts due to some security freeze. She needed temporary access to mine to pay hospital bills. I didn't hesitate. Within an hour, Rebecca was an authorized user on my savings account. The emergency turned out to be a low-grade fever. Sophie was home by dinner, and Rebecca never removed her access. I trusted her. She was my sister. What I discovered later, in small amounts I almost didn't notice, was that Rebecca had been making withdrawals. $200 here, $400 there, always just under the threshold that would trigger an alert. Over 3 years, the total came to roughly $3,500. I noticed. I said nothing because calling out family felt worse than losing money, because I didn't want to seem petty, because I was still, after everything, the strong one. 6 months ago, I saw the text messages on Rebecca's phone. Easy mark, doormat, useful. I removed her from my checking account that night. But the savings account, the one with $92,000, I forgot. One oversight, one moment of incomplete action. That's all it took for my sister to steal my future. The hold music stopped. Ms. Bennett, thank you for waiting. I straightened in my chair. Yes, I'm here. We've frozen the savings account as requested. The linked vendor payment account has also been frozen pending investigation. Relief should have flooded through me. Instead, I felt only a cold readiness. All automatic payments scheduled for the next 72 hours have been suspended. Then the representative said something that made my blood run cold. Ms. Bennett, there's something else you should know. When we reviewed the transaction pattern for the fraud report, we noticed something unusual. The first withdrawal from your account was made exactly 1 week ago, the same day your sister was added to a joint account with a Michael Anderson. It appears she gained access to his accounts on the same day she accessed yours. I sat very still. She didn't just steal from me. She's stealing from her fiancé, too. And nobody knew. Nobody but me. I didn't sleep that night. By the time Friday morning arrived, I had been awake for nearly 24 hours, running on coffee and something sharper than caffeine. Determination, maybe, or fury finally given permission to exist. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, notes scattered across every available surface, the bank's fraud confirmation email glowing on my screen. Outside my window, Denver woke up like any other Friday morning, people heading to work, grabbing coffee, living their ordinary lives. For them, nothing had changed. For me, everything had. The clock on my laptop read 6:47 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for tomorrow at 4 p.m. That gave me approximately 32 hours to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The sister who forgives and forgets, who absorbs the blow and moves on, who keeps the peace at any cost, or the woman who finally, after 35 years, fights back. I picked up my phone and dialed Amanda Torres. Amanda and I had been friends since college, roommates freshman year, and we'd stayed close ever since. She was a corporate attorney now at a prestigious Denver firm, the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and could dismantle an argument with surgical precision. She was also the only person in my life who had never liked Rebecca. She's a user, Amanda had told me once years ago. I don't know how you can't see it. I hadn't wanted to see it then. I saw it now. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Sarah, it's 7 a.m. on my day off. Someone better be dead. I almost laughed. Not dead, but I might commit murder if you don't help me. There was a pause. Then Amanda's voice sharpened into full alertness. I'm listening. I told her everything. Rebecca's phone call, the stolen $92,000, the frozen accounts, the wedding that depended entirely on my authorization, and the revelation from the bank that Rebecca had accessed Michael's accounts on the same day she accessed mine. When I finished, silence stretched across the line for a long moment. She did what? Amanda's voice came out flat with disbelief. And there's more, I said. I think she's also stealing from her fiancé. The silence lasted another 3 seconds. Then Amanda said, I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. And for the love of God, make more coffee. Amanda arrived at 8:30. looking put together despite the early hour. She carried her laptop bag and a legal pad, her eyes already scanning my scattered notes before she'd even sat down. "Okay," she said, setting up at my kitchen table like it was a war room. "Walk me through everything from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." So I did. Every document, every transaction record, every detail I'd assembled through the sleepless night. Amanda listened without interrupting, taking notes in her precise handwriting, her expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. Authorized user doesn't mean authorized to drain the account. She said she had access. She didn't have permission to take $92,000. That's theft. Grand theft, actually, given the amount. You have grounds for criminal charges, fraud too, if she misrepresented herself to access those funds. And what about the wedding? I asked. The vendors? Amanda pulled my vendor contracts toward her, scanning each one with practiced efficiency. You signed as guarantor on all of these. You're not just the payer. You're the contractual party. Her eyes met mine. Without your authorization, these vendors can't proceed. Legally, you can halt every single payment. The words settled over me like armor. I had suspected as much, but hearing it from an attorney made it real. Rebecca had built her dream wedding on my signature, and I could tear it down with a phone call. "Amanda," I said slowly, "if I freeze everything, the wedding collapses. My family will blame me." Amanda's expression softened slightly. "They'll blame you anyway. They always do. Then let's make sure you're protected when they do." We spent the next hour building a strategy. Step 1. Confirm all vendor contracts were solely in my name. Step 2. Issue formal stop payment orders to each vendor. Step 3. Document everything for potential legal action. Step 4. Decide whether to contact Michael. That last part was the hardest. "He's about to marry a woman who's stealing from him," Amanda said. "Doesn't he deserve to know?" I hesitated. I've never even met him. Maybe he already knows. Maybe he's part of it. Amanda shook her head. Or maybe he's another victim just like you. I thought about David, Rebecca's first husband. The man she'd painted as financially abusive when the truth was the opposite. He hadn't known either. Not until it was too late. By then, his credit was destroyed, his reputation shattered, his custody of Sophie reduced to weekends. If someone had warned him, maybe things would have been different. I'll freeze the wedding, I decided. If Michael reaches out, I'll tell him the truth, but I'm not going to hunt him down. I have enough to deal with right now. Amanda nodded. Fair enough for now. The vendor calls began at 9 a.m. Rosewood Manor, the wedding venue, answered on the second ring. Good morning. This is Patricia speaking. How can I help you? I took a breath. This is Sarah Bennett. I'm the guarantor on the Bennett-Anderson wedding scheduled for tomorrow. I need to verify the payment status and discuss the contract terms. Patricia's voice warmed immediately. Oh yes, Miss Bennett. Your sister speaks so highly of you. She's talked about how generous you've been. My stomach tightened. Has she? What exactly has she said? Well, Patricia continued cheerfully, she calls you her silent investor. She said you insisted on funding the wedding as a gift because you felt guilty about something. Not being supportive enough during her divorce, I think she said. I closed my eyes, letting the full weight of Rebecca's deception wash over me. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd constructed an entire narrative to justify it. In her story, I was the guilty one, the absent sister trying to make amends. She'd made me complicit in my own robbery. That's not accurate, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need to issue a stop payment on the remaining balance. Please don't proceed with any setup until you hear from me directly. There was a pause. Ms. Bennett, the wedding is tomorrow. I'm aware. The pattern repeated with each call. Belmont Catering had a $15,000 contract with $7,000 still due. Your sister said you volunteered to pay because you couldn't attend the wedding yourself, the manager told me. She said you were too busy with work but wanted to contribute. I had said no such thing. I issued the stop payment. Flourish Florals, $4,500 total. Your sister was so grateful, the florist said. She told me you two had finally reconciled after years of being estranged. We had never been estranged. We had never reconciled because there had been nothing to reconcile from. At least nothing Rebecca would ever admit to. I froze the remaining $2,500. By noon, I had contacted every vendor. DJ, photographer, hair and makeup, transportation. Each one had a different story, a different version of why Sarah Bennett was so generously funding her sister's wedding. In one version, I was making up for missing Rebecca's first wedding. In another, I was the wealthy finance sister who wanted to treat Rebecca like a princess. In yet another, I was the family's unofficial wedding planner who had insisted on handling all the details. Not a single story was true, but they all painted the same picture. Rebecca had built a fantasy world where she was the beloved bride and I was the supporting character, so eager to please that I would pay any price for her approval. She had weaponized my reputation for responsibility against me. Amanda compiled the notes from each call. "She didn't just steal your money," Amanda said quietly. "She stole your reputation. She made you the villain in a story where you're actually the victim." I stared at the list of vendors, the total amounts, the elaborate web of lies my sister had spun. "She's been doing this our whole lives," I said, making herself the heroine of every story. Amanda's jaw tightened. Not anymore. By 4 p.m., every vendor had been notified. Rosewood Manor would not open its doors. Belmont Catering would not deliver food. Flourish Florals would not arrange a single rose. The DJ would not play music. The photographer would not take pictures. $150 guests would arrive tomorrow to find nothing. Rebecca's $45,000 dream wedding was now frozen solid, and she had no idea. Amanda ordered takeout and forced me to eat. "You did the right thing," she said. I chewed without tasting. "Then why do I feel like I just detonated a bomb?" "Because you did," Amanda replied. "But it was a bomb she built. You just lit the fuse." My phone had been silent all day. No calls from Rebecca, no texts from my parents. Rebecca probably thought I was somewhere crying, paralyzed by her betrayal, too weak to fight back. She was about to learn otherwise. At 8:47 p.m., my phone finally rang. Rebecca flashed across the screen. Amanda and I both stared at it. "She knows," Amanda said. I picked up the phone but didn't speak. I just waited. And then I heard my sister's voice. No longer sugary sweet, no longer triumphant, shaking, high-pitched, panicked. "What did you do?" I said. "Nothing." Her voice rose to a scream. "What did you do?" The venue called. The caterer called. They all called. They said the payments are frozen. They said you froze them. I let the silence stretch for one more moment. Then I spoke, my voice calm, controlled, almost pleasant. "You stole $92,000 from me, Rebecca. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" The line went silent. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice had changed. Not panicked anymore. Cold, dangerous. "You have no idea what you've just started." I woke on Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through my apartment windows. For one brief, disoriented moment, I forgot what day it was. Then reality crashed back, and I remembered everything. It was my sister's wedding day, the wedding that no longer existed. Amanda was asleep in the armchair across from me, her laptop still balanced on her knees. We had both passed out sometime after midnight, too exhausted to make it to actual beds. I reached for my phone on the coffee table and felt my stomach clench. 14 missed calls from Rebecca, 6 from Mom, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, a cascade of text messages, each one more frantic than the last. Rebecca at 2:47 a.m. "Call me back now." Rebecca at 3:15 a.m. "I swear to God, Sarah, if you don't fix this." Rebecca at 5:02 a.m. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Mom at 6:30 a.m. "What have you done? Call me immediately." I scrolled through them all, reading but not responding. Then I set the phone down, walked to my kitchen, and made coffee. The morning was beautiful. Perfect wedding weather, actually. Clear blue sky, gentle October warmth, the kind of day that photographers dream about. Somewhere across town, 150 people were probably putting on their best clothes, checking their hair in mirrors, looking forward to champagne and cake. They had no idea what they were walking into. I imagined the scene unfolding at Rosewood Manor. The venue should have been bustling with setup crews by now. Florists arranging centerpieces, caterers preparing appetizers, the DJ testing sound equipment. Instead, the gates would be locked, the parking lot empty, the beautiful garden silent. Rebecca would arrive in her car, wedding dress hanging in its garment bag, expecting to step into her fairy tale. She would find nothing but a coordinator with an apologetic face and devastating news. My phone buzzed, a text from a Denver number I didn't recognize. Miss Bennett, this is Patricia from Rosewood Manor. The bride has arrived and is extremely distressed. She insists there's been a mistake. Please advise. I typed back, there's no mistake. The stop payment stands. Please direct all inquiries to my attorney. I included Amanda's contact information, then silenced my phone. I had said what needed to be said. Now I would wait. Amanda stirred awake around 10 now on, blinking against the morning light. She saw my face and immediately straightened. What happened? Nothing yet, I said. But it's about to. By 3:30 in the afternoon, my phone had become a chronicle of disaster. The texts came from friends of friends, from distant relatives, from people I barely knew who had somehow gotten my number. Did you hear about Rebecca's wedding? Everything's canceled. The venue is locked. There's no food. People are just standing in the parking lot in their fancy clothes with nowhere to go. One text included a photo, grainy and distant, showing a crowd of confused guests clustered near the Rosewood Manor entrance. And there, at the center of it all, a flash of white. Rebecca, still in her street clothes, gesturing wildly at someone I couldn't make out. Then came the text that stopped me cold. Michael, Rebecca's fiancé, the man I had never met. His message was brief and bewildered. Is this Sarah Bennett? I'm Michael Anderson, Rebecca's fiancé. Or I was as of this morning. I need to understand what's happening. Rebecca says you sabotaged the wedding out of jealousy, but something doesn't add up. The vendors keep saying you were paying for everything, that you were the guarantor on all the contracts, but Rebecca told me she was paying from her savings. She told me she had $40,000 saved. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, Rebecca has no savings. She has $28,000 in credit card debt, and she stole $92,000 from my bank account this week to pay for this wedding. I'm sorry you're finding out this way. The response came quickly. I think I need to hear the full story. Before I could reply, my phone rang. Not Michael. Mom. I let it ring 3 times, bracing myself, then answered. How could you do this to your sister? Mom's voice was sharp enough to draw blood. On her wedding day, Sarah. Her wedding day. I kept my voice even. Did Rebecca tell you what she did? Did she tell you she stole $92,000 from me? Mom didn't pause. That's between you two. You didn't have to ruin her wedding over money. Over money? I repeated, my composure cracking for the first time. She stole my life savings, everything I had. That's not a family disagreement. That's a crime. Family doesn't press charges against family, Mom snapped. You fix this, Sarah. Whatever it takes, you fix it right now. I thought about all the times I had fixed things. All the times I had written checks, absorbed costs, smoothed over problems, kept the peace. I thought about being 10 years old and giving up piano lessons so Rebecca could dance. I thought about being 16 and still taking the bus while Rebecca drove her second new car. I thought about paying for a wedding that wasn't mine. Paying for a divorce that wasn't mine. Paying and paying and paying, while everyone told me I was the strong one. The one who could handle it. The one who understood. I'm not fixing anything, I said. Rebecca created this mess. She can deal with the consequences. Then you're no daughter of mine. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully. My hands were shaking, but not with grief, with something that felt almost like freedom. Amanda watched me from across the room. Your mom? I nodded. I think I just became an orphan. My phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown area code. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Sarah, Rebecca's sister? This is David, her ex-husband. I heard what happened. News travels. I wanted to say thank you and to warn you. I stared at the screen. David, the man Rebecca had destroyed with accusations and lies. The man who had lost his reputation, his credit, and half his custody of Sophie, because he dared to question where their money was going. His next message appeared. She did the same thing to me. Exactly the same. Drained the accounts, blamed me for everything, made me look like the villain. I lost my reputation, my credit, my relationship with my daughter. No one believed me. Her family certainly didn't. Another message. She's going to try everything now. Tears, threats, family pressure. She'll make you feel like the monster. Don't fall for it. You're not the monster. She is. I was still processing David's words when the pounding started. Not a knock. An assault on my front door, violent enough to shake the frame. Amanda jumped up. Don't open it. But I was already moving to the peephole, some part of me knowing what I would see. And there she was. Rebecca, still in her wedding dress, though it was wrinkled now, stained with parking lot dust and mascara tears. Her hair was half done, falling in loose strands around her face. Her eyes were wild with something beyond anger, something unhinged. I opened the door. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Two sisters separated by 35 years of dysfunction, and a threshold neither of us wanted to cross. Then Rebecca's voice came out raw, ragged, barely human. You ruined my life. The words echoed down the apartment hallway. I could see neighbors' doors cracking open, curious faces peering out at the spectacle. My sister in her destroyed wedding dress, screaming at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. I stood perfectly still, looked at this stranger in white, this woman who shared my blood, but had never shared my values. And I spoke quietly, calmly, with a steadiness I hadn't known I possessed. No, Rebecca, you ruined your own life. I just stopped paying for it. Her face twisted with rage. She stepped forward, and for the first time in my life, I didn't step back. Rebecca stood in my doorway, wedding dress stained and wrinkled, mascara carved in dark rivers down her cheeks. Behind me, I could hear Amanda shifting, her phone already out and recording. Smart woman. We might need evidence of whatever happened next. Do you have any idea what you've done? Rebecca's voice cracked between screaming and sobbing. 150 people. They all saw. They all know. Michael's family flew in from Seattle. His grandmother is 83 years old. Everyone was staring at me like I was some kind of criminal. I stood my ground in the doorway, blocking entry into my apartment. You need to lower your voice. You're disturbing my neighbors. But my calmness only seemed to infuriate her more. Rebecca's hands clenched at her sides, her breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment, I thought she might actually try to hit me. Then something shifted in her face. I watched it happen in real time. The rage flickering, recalculating. She was used to getting her way with anger. When that didn't work, she had other tools. Her shoulders crumpled. Her face transformed from fury to grief. The tears, which had been angry, became something else. Theatrical, wounded. How could you do this to me, Sarah? She used my childhood nickname, the one she hadn't called me in years. Her voice dropped to something softer, more vulnerable. I'm your sister, your only sister. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes, but I was finally going to be happy, finally going to have a real family, and you took that from me on my wedding day. She reached for my hand, and I stepped back. Don't you remember how close we used to be? Sharing a room when we were little, telling each other secrets. What happened to us? I almost laughed. What happened to us was 35 years of you taking and me giving. But I didn't say that. I just watched her perform, recognizing every beat of the script she'd been running since childhood. The tears, the memories, the appeal to blood. She had used these same tactics on our parents, on David, on every person who had ever tried to hold her accountable, and it had always worked. Until now. The performance shifted again when she sensed I wasn't melting. Rebecca straightened, wiped her eyes with an exaggerated gesture, and tried a different angle. "After everything I've done for you," she said, her voice taking on a righteous edge. "Who was there when Mom and Dad favored you for everything? Who defended you when kids at school called you boring? Who included you in my friend group when you had no one? I made you who you are, Sarah. And this is how you repay me?" The lies were so bold, so completely divorced from reality, that I almost admired the audacity. Mom and Dad favored me. I was the one taking the bus while Rebecca drove new cars. I was the one with the small bedroom, the grocery store birthday cakes, the scholarship I had to earn because there was no money left for my education. But in Rebecca's version of history, she was always the victim, always the one who had sacrificed. "It's not like you were going to use that money anytime soon anyway." The words slipped out before she could stop them. I froze. "Excuse me?" Rebecca's eyes flickered, realizing her mistake, but she doubled down. "I just meant you don't have a wedding to plan, no house, no family of your own. That money was just sitting there, and I needed it. I needed it more than you did." Amanda's voice came from behind me, cold and precise. "Did you get that?" She held up her phone. Recording. Rebecca's face went pale. Behind her, the elevator dinged, and I heard footsteps approaching. Familiar footsteps. My stomach dropped even before I saw them. Mom and Dad, marching down the hallway like reinforcements arriving at a battlefield. They must have driven straight from wherever they'd been when Rebecca called. Dad looked tired, uncomfortable. His natural state. Mom looked ready for war. "Haven't you done enough?" Mom's voice cut through the hallway. She went straight to Rebecca, wrapping an arm around her, shooting me a venomous glare. "Look at her. Look what you've reduced her to." I stepped back to let them into the apartment. Not because I wanted them there, but because my neighbors were still watching from their cracked doors. Whatever happened next didn't need an audience beyond the people already involved. They arranged themselves in my living room like a tribunal. Rebecca collapsed dramatically on my couch. Mom sat beside her, stroking her hair like she was a wounded child. Dad hovered by the window, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Amanda positioned herself near the front door, phone still recording, watching everything with the sharp attention of a lawyer building a case. "I raised you better than this, Sarah." Mom's voice was cold. "Family is everything. Everything. Whatever Rebecca did, you handle it privately. You don't humiliate her publicly. Do you understand what people are saying about us? About our family?" I looked at my mother. This woman who had spent 40 years molding me into the family's shock absorber, and I felt something harden inside me. Rebecca stole $92,000 from me. That's not a misunderstanding. That's grand theft. Dad made a small sound somewhere between a cough and a word. Everyone looked at him. He stood by the window, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Just let it go, Sarah," he mumbled. "I'll pay you back somehow." Mom's head snapped toward him. "Richard." But Dad kept talking, his voice barely audible. "She's right, Diana. Rebecca took the money. I saw the bank alerts on Sarah's account. I set them up for her years ago, and they still come to my email too. I knew when the withdrawals happened. The silence that followed was absolute. You knew?" Mom's voice had changed, the fury redirecting toward her husband. "You knew and you didn't tell me?" Dad shrank further into himself. "She begged me not to say anything. Said she'd pay it back after the wedding. Said it would all work out." I stared at my father, understanding finally that his silence wasn't just cowardice. It was complicity. He had watched Rebecca steal from me and said nothing. He had received those alerts, seen the money disappearing from my account, and chosen to protect his golden child over his responsible one, just like he always had. Mom turned back to me, but something in her expression had shifted. She was still angry, but now the anger was mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe. The first crack in the fortress she'd built around Rebecca's behavior. Rebecca's phone rang, cutting through the tension. She answered. "Put it on speaker." A small voice came through, scared and confused. "Mommy, when are you coming home? Why did the party stop? Did I do something wrong?" "Sophie." My heart clenched at the sound of her voice. Rebecca's eyes met mine, and I saw the calculation there, even through her tears. "No, sweetheart," Rebecca cooed. "Mommy's just talking to Aunt Sarah. She made a mistake. But Mommy's going to fix it." Then, with deliberate cruelty, "Tell Aunt Sarah you love her, baby." Lily's innocent voice. "I love you, Aunt Sarah. Please don't be mad at Mommy." Rebecca hung up, her gaze locked on mine. "She adores you. She wants you at her birthday next month." "Are you really going to take her mother away over money? What kind of aunt does that make you?" Amanda stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "That's enough. Using your daughter to emotionally blackmail your sister. That's a new low, even for you." Rebecca's head snapped toward her. "Stay out of this. This is family business." Amanda didn't flinch. "I'm Sarah's family, the kind that doesn't steal from her." I walked to my front door and opened it. Everyone out. Mom started to protest. "Now," I turned to Rebecca, "you have 72 hours. Return every dollar you stole, all $92,000, and sign a legal document acknowledging what you did. Do that, and this stays private. No police, no courts. Refuse, and I file criminal charges Monday morning." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "You would send your own sister to prison?" I looked at Rebecca. "She would send herself to prison. I'm just the one pressing the button." They filed out slowly. Mom supporting Rebecca like a wounded soldier. Dad trailing behind, unable to meet my eyes. But at the door, Rebecca paused, turned. Her face had changed again. Not tearful anymore, not raging. Something colder, something calculating. She leaned close, whispered so only I could hear. "You think you've won? You think freezing my wedding was the end of this? I know things about you, Sarah. Things that could end your career. 72 hours. Fine. Use them to remember who you're really dealing with." She walked away, wedding dress dragging on the concrete. I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. Amanda was watching me carefully. What did she say? I closed my eyes. She threatened to destroy my career. Amanda frowned. "With what? You've done nothing wrong." My stomach clenched. There was something 3 years ago at work. A calculation error that almost cost us a major client. I caught it, fixed it, disclosed it to my supervisor. No harm was done. But Rebecca was the only person I ever told about it, and now she was going to use it against me. Every secret I had ever shared with my sister, every vulnerability, every confession, all of it was ammunition now. Sunday morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee untouched, watching the clock count down the hours of Rebecca's ultimatum. 64 hours remaining. 64 hours until I either received my money back or filed criminal charges against my own sister. I already knew which outcome was more likely. Rebecca's whispered threat echoed in my mind. Things that could end your career. The Morrison account situation had been 3 years ago. A calculation error in a client projection that I caught before it caused any damage. I had disclosed it immediately to my supervisor, who had praised my integrity. It should have been a non-issue. But Rebecca had a talent for twisting non-issues into weapons. If I was going to fight, I needed to understand the full scope of who I was fighting. What else had Rebecca done? Who else had she hurt? How deep did this pattern go? My phone rang at 9:15. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I answered cautiously. "Sarah, it's David. David Sullivan, Rebecca's ex. We texted yesterday, but I need to tell you more. I need to tell you everything." I sat down my coffee. "I'm listening." His voice was steady, but heavy with years of accumulated pain. We met at a friend's party when Rebecca was 28. She was charming, beautiful, the most attentive woman I'd ever met. She made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We were engaged in 4 months, married in 8. I thought I'd found my soulmate. He paused. The first sign was small. A joint account withdrawal I didn't authorize. $2,000 gone. When I asked about it, she cried and said she'd meant to tell me. Her car needed repairs. She'd been embarrassed to ask. I believed her. I loved her. Another withdrawal followed, then another. Over 2 years, David explained, nearly $40,000 vanished from their accounts. Every time he questioned a charge, Rebecca had an explanation ready. Emergencies with Sophie, medical bills, a friend in need, and every time she cried, apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again. Until it did. When I finally put my foot down and demanded we see a financial counselor, she changed tactics, David continued. Suddenly, I wasn't the concerned husband anymore. I was the controlling one, the financially abusive one. She started telling friends that I monitored her spending, that I gave her an allowance like a child, that she was scared of my temper. I closed my eyes, recognizing the pattern, the same playbook she was using now. When I filed for divorce after finding $40,000 in hidden credit card debt, she was ready, David said. She had prepared the narrative for months. Her lawyer painted me as a monster. Controlling, secretive, probably violent. They had character witnesses, friends she'd been feeding stories to for years. And I had bank statements. Do you know what the judge saw? A frightened woman and a man making accusations. She had tears. I had spreadsheets. Tears won. His voice cracked slightly. I lost primary custody of Sophie, my own daughter. The judge awarded Rebecca majority custody because she seemed like the sympathetic parent, the one who needed protection. I've spent 3 years rebuilding my reputation, my credit, my life, and I still only see my daughter on weekends. She took everything from me, Sarah, everything, because I asked where our money went. I thanked David and promised to stay in touch. Then I called Amanda, who connected me with the attorney she'd mentioned. Robert Martinez specialized in financial fraud cases, and he could see me at noon. Robert's office was in downtown Denver, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was a silver-haired man in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a reputation for not losing. Amanda had called in a favor, and he'd cleared his Sunday afternoon for an emergency consultation. I spread my evidence across his conference table. Bank statements, transaction records, vendor contracts, the recording of Rebecca's confrontation at my apartment. Robert reviewed each document methodically, taking notes in precise handwriting. When he finally looked up, his expression was grave. "This is a clear case of grand theft," he said. "Unauthorized access to your account doesn't equal authorization to withdraw the forged documents. Assuming she claimed you gave permission for the vendor guarantees, that's fraud." Combined with the evidence of premeditation, his investigator, Kevin, had already pulled preliminary findings. "Your sister is looking at felony charges." Kevin passed a folder to Robert, who scanned its contents. "We traced the access logs on your savings account. Your sister attempted to access it 5 times over the past 2 months. 4 failed attempts before the successful one. She was testing your security, looking for the right moment." He looked at me. This wasn't impulse. This was hunting. The money trail was equally damning. Robert's team had tracked where my $92,000 had gone. $35,000 to wedding vendors before the freeze. $28,000 to pay off Rebecca's credit card debt. $15,000 transferred to a joint account with Michael, and $14,000 withdrawn as cash. "She used your money to give herself a clean slate," Robert explained. "Erase the debt, fund the new marriage, and keep a cash reserve in case things went wrong. She was building a new life with your savings as the foundation." I met Michael Anderson at a coffee shop in Lodo that afternoon. He looked nothing like I'd imagined. Tired, rumpled, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept since the wedding collapsed. We sat in a quiet corner, 2 strangers bonded by the same predator. "I checked my accounts after we talked yesterday," he said, staring at his untouched coffee. "You were right. Small withdrawals over the past month. $200 here, $300 there, always just under the alert threshold. Total was almost $4,000. I never noticed." He looked up at me with exhausted eyes. "She told me she had $40,000 in savings for the wedding. She told me you were estranged, that you'd been cruel to her during her divorce. She said her ex-husband was abusive, that she'd escaped with nothing. Every single thing was a lie." I showed him the evidence. Bank statements, vendor contracts, the pattern documented in stark numbers. His face went through stages, pale to red to pale again, as he absorbed the scope of deception. "There's something else," Michael said slowly. "Something that's been bothering me. The vendors told me you were paying for the wedding, that you were the guarantor on everything. But Rebecca told me you offered to do it. She said it was an apology for being absent during her hard times. She said you felt guilty for having a better career and wanted to make it up to her. She made it sound like your idea, like you insisted." I shook my head. "I never offered. She put my name on those contracts without my permission. I was the guarantor because she needed someone with credit to sign, and she knew I wouldn't check the fine print." Michael put his head in his hands. "Who is this woman?" He looked up then, something else troubling his expression. "There's one more thing I need to ask you. Rebecca told me there was an inheritance coming, $200,000 from your grandmother. She said it would arrive after the wedding, that you'd both receive it. She said that's why money was tight now. Everything was tied up in probate. She used that inheritance to convince me to co-sign on our condo down payment. I put $30,000 against that promise." I stared at him, the audacity of it taking my breath away. "Our grandmother died 15 years ago. She left us nothing because she had nothing to leave. There is no inheritance. There never was." The color drained from Michael's face. "I'm legally responsible for a $30,000 debt based on a complete fabrication." That evening, I connected David, Michael, and Robert on a conference call. 3 victims of the same woman, finally comparing notes. David had divorce records and custody documents. Michael had bank statements and text messages about the fake inheritance. I had the theft evidence and vendor fraud documentation. Together, it painted a picture of serial financial abuse spanning years and multiple victims. Robert's assessment was blunt. "This isn't just one case. This is a pattern of criminal behavior. The DA will love this. Multiple victims with documentation, clear intent, and now with her social media activity, she's building her own prison." I frowned. "What social media activity?" Robert passed me his phone. Michael had forwarded a screenshot from Rebecca's Facebook page, posted just 2 hours ago. A photo of my sister, tearful but composed, with a caption that made my blood run cold. "Some people will do anything to destroy your happiness. My own sister stole my wedding, my fiancé, and my future. But I won't be silenced. The truth will come out. Family betrayal. Sister, from hell. Justice for Rebecca." The comments were already flooding in, hundreds of people rallying to her side. "Stay strong, Queen. Blood isn't always family. What a monster your sister must be." Rebecca wasn't waiting for my deadline. She was going public first, painting herself as the victim before anyone could learn the truth. The war had just gone public, and I was already cast as the villain. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of finality. 72 hours had passed. The deadline I gave Rebecca had come and gone without a single dollar returned, without a phone call, without any acknowledgement that she had done anything wrong. Instead, her social media campaign had gained momentum overnight. Her hashtag, #JusticeForRebecca, was trending locally. Hundreds of strangers were calling me a monster, based on nothing but my sister's carefully crafted lies. I sat in Robert Martinez's office at 8 a.m., signing the formal complaint. Criminal charges for grand theft, fraud, and unauthorized account access. A civil suit for full restitution, plus damages. The documents felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel. I was about to set in motion something that could send my own sister to prison. "She's not going to pay," Robert said, watching me sign. "She's betting you'll back down. Her social media stunt proves she thinks this is a PR battle, not a legal one." He took the signed documents and placed them in a folder for his paralegal. "She's wrong." By 10:30, the papers were filed at the Denver County Courthouse. Criminal complaint submitted, civil suit initiated. Rebecca would be served within 24 hours. The family matter was now a matter of public record. Standing outside the courthouse, I felt the weight of what I had just done. Amanda stood beside me, her presence steady and reassuring. "You did the right thing," she said. "I watched people stream past us, ordinary citizens going about their ordinary business, none of them knowing that my life had just crossed a point of no return. Then why do I feel like I just amputated my own arm? Because you did, Amanda replied. But it was gangrenous. It was killing you. Robert had advised me to stay away from my parents' house and let the legal process work. But I had other plans. If my family was going to take sides, I wanted them to see the full picture first. They deserved to know who they were defending. I arrived at my childhood home in Lakewood just after 4 p.m. The modest ranch house with its manicured lawn and American flag by the door looked exactly as it always had. But everything felt different now. There were 3 cars in the driveway. Mom's SUV, Dad's truck, and Rebecca's sedan. And one more. A BMW I recognized from photographs. Michael's car. Everyone was already assembled, waiting for something. Maybe waiting for me. I grabbed my folder of evidence and walked to the door. Amanda had offered to come, but I asked her to wait in the car. This was family business. The ugly kind that needed to happen behind closed doors. I didn't knock. It was still technically my childhood home. I just opened the door and walked in. The living room looked like a war council in progress. Mom sat on the couch, arms crossed, face tight with barely contained fury. Dad occupied his usual recliner, looking like he wanted to disappear into the cushions. Rebecca was positioned in the armchair like a wounded queen receiving sympathizers. And Michael stood by the window, separate from everyone else, his expression unreadable. In the corner, Sophie sat coloring quietly, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. Silence fell when I entered. Every eye turned to me. Mom spoke first. I hope you're here to apologize. I set my folder on the coffee table. I'm here to tell the truth. What you do with it is your choice. Before anyone could interrupt, I opened the folder and spread its contents across the coffee table. Bank statements, transaction records, vendor contracts. I walked them through everything, my voice steady and factual. Rebecca stole $92,000 from my savings account. 3 separate withdrawals over 1 week, planned and executed. I pointed to the vendor contracts. She told every wedding vendor that I volunteered to pay, called me her silent investor, claimed I was making up for not being supportive during her divorce. She forged my name on these guarantor documents. Rebecca exploded from her chair. You never loved me. Her voice cracked with fury. You were always jealous of me. Always. Mom and Dad paid for everything for you. College, your car, your apartment deposit. I let out a short, bitter laugh. They paid for my state school. You got private school. You got dance lessons. You got every birthday party I never had. And I paid them back, Rebecca. Every dollar. Did you? The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca's mouth worked, but no words came out. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. I pulled out David's documentation. This isn't the first time. I spread the papers showing the divorce records, the custody battle, the pattern of financial abuse. She did the same thing to her first husband, $40,000. Then she accused him of being financially abusive when he confronted her. He lost his reputation. He lost custody of Sophie, all because he asked where their money went. Dad stood up suddenly, his face red. Stop. Just stop. Everyone froze. My father never raised his voice. In 40 years, I had never heard him yell. But he was yelling now. Rebecca, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep covering for you. Rebecca's face went white. Daddy, what are you talking about? 3 years ago, Dad said, his voice shaking. The business investment you needed. $50,000 from my retirement account. I gave it to you because you said you'd lose everything. You said you'd be homeless. You said I'd never see Sophie again if I didn't help. You never paid back a dime. Mom's transformation was instantaneous. The anger in her face redirected like a heat-seeking missile. Richard, what are you saying? You took $50,000 from our retirement without telling me? Dad shrank under her gaze. She begged me, Diana. Said she'd be homeless. Said I'd never see Sophie again. He looked old suddenly, broken. That money was for our future. I know. I didn't know how to tell you. Mom turned to Rebecca, and for the first time in my life, I saw something shift in her eyes. The automatic defense, The reflexive protection of her golden child wavered. She was finally seeing what I had seen for years. Michael stepped away from the window. His voice was flat, drained of emotion. "Rebecca, I'm done." Rebecca spun toward him. "Michael, baby, don't listen to them." "I've seen the evidence," Michael said. "All of it. The fake inheritance, the forged documents, the money you stole from my accounts." He shook his head. "There is no wedding. There never will be. I'm canceling the condo purchase. My lawyer is handling the paperwork. You'll be hearing from him about the $30,000 you cost me." Rebecca's composure shattered completely. "You can't do this. We're supposed to be married. We're supposed to start a life together." Michael walked toward the door. "I was supposed to marry a woman who loved me, not a con artist." He paused beside me on his way out. "I'm sorry I believed her lies about you. Whatever you need for the court case, I'll testify." Then he was gone, and the door closed behind him with a sound like finality. Through all of this, through the shouting and accusations and crumbling alliances, a small voice cut through. "Mommy." Everyone froze. Sophie stood in the doorway, her coloring book forgotten, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, why is everyone fighting? Did I do something wrong? Is it because of the wedding? I'm sorry the wedding got ruined. Please don't fight anymore." I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking. "Sweetheart, this isn't your fault. None of this. Grown-ups are just figuring things out. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me?" "Nothing." Rebecca watched me comfort her daughter, and something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or recognition of what she'd become. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Fine," Rebecca said, standing straight, wiping her tears. Her voice had turned cold. "You all want to believe I'm the villain? Fine. But I'm not going down alone." She turned to me, her eyes hard. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Your precious career, your perfect reputation. I know about the Morrison account, Sarah. I know what you almost did, and I have emails to prove it." She grabbed Sophie's hand. "We're leaving." Sophie protested, but Rebecca's grip was iron. The door slammed behind them. Rebecca's threat hung in the air like poison gas. The Morrison account, my one vulnerability. The mistake I had confided in her during a moment of weakness, trusting my sister with my fears. And now she claimed to have emails. Forged, fabricated. It didn't matter. In the wrong hands, perception beats truth every time. The war had just gone nuclear. I woke on Wednesday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. Notifications flooded the screen faster than I could read them. Facebook tags, Instagram mentions, text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Amanda was already awake in my living room, her face grim in the blue glow of her laptop. "You need to see this," she said. Rebecca's public Facebook post had been shared over 800 times overnight. The photo showed her looking broken and beautiful, tear-stained, and holding a wilted bouquet, the perfect image of a wronged woman. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "My own sister destroyed my wedding, stole my fiancé, and is now trying to send me to prison. All because I asked for help during my darkest time. Some people can't stand to see others happy. I refuse to be silenced. Sister from hell. Family betrayal. Justice for Rebecca." The comment section had become a support rally. Hundreds of strangers expressing outrage on Rebecca's behalf. "Stay strong, Queen. Blood isn't always family. I'm so sorry you have such a toxic sister." The narrative had been set, and I was already the villain. Rebecca's story grew more elaborate with each subsequent post. According to her version, I had always been jealous of her beauty and success. I had promised to fund her wedding, and then withdrawn support at the last second out of spite. I had turned Michael against her with lies. I was now using legal threats to silence a domestic abuse survivor. Each claim was more outrageous than the last, and each one was believed by people who had never met either of us. The most insidious post was a vague reference to my professional life. "Some people in finance shouldn't be trusted with other people's money. Just saying," Ask her about Morrison. No details, just enough to plant seeds of suspicion. Enough to make my colleagues wonder what secrets I might be hiding. The personal attacks started arriving around 9 a.m. Text messages from acquaintances who had seen Rebecca's posts. Is it true you sabotaged her wedding? I thought you were close. Phone calls from concerned friends asking what was happening, and messages from strangers who had somehow found my contact information. You're a horrible person. Karma will get you. I hope you end up alone. I scrolled through the comments on Rebecca's main post, looking for familiar names, trying to gauge how far the damage had spread. Then I saw a name that stopped me cold. Sandra Whitmore. We had been friends in college. She had struggled to find work after graduation, and 2 years ago, I had given her a glowing reference that helped her land a position at a marketing firm. She owed me nothing, but I had thought we were friends. Her comment read, I always knew Sarah was cold. She's calculating and fake. This doesn't surprise me at all. A woman I had helped, a woman I had believed in and vouched for professionally, was now publicly declaring me a monster. The betrayal from a stranger I could dismiss. The betrayal from Sandra cut deeper than Rebecca's posts ever could. My work phone rang at 11 hours. Michael Torres, my supervisor. Sarah, I'm getting some concerning messages about you. Someone sent an anonymous email to HR about financial misconduct. The Morrison account situation. I don't believe it, but I need to ask, is there anything I should know? I explained everything. The calculation error 3 years ago, my immediate disclosure, the clean audit that followed, the acknowledgement letter from my supervisor at the time. Michael listened without interrupting. Okay, he said finally. I believe you. I'll handle HR. But keep me posted. This could get messy. Amanda had been monitoring Rebecca's social media throughout the morning. Don't respond, she advised. Don't engage. Let her dig her own grave. Everything she posts is evidence of harassment and defamation. Robert can use all of this. But watching Rebecca poison the well, watching strangers believe lies about me, watching my reputation crumble in real time, was harder than I had anticipated. She's trying to destroy me before I can destroy her, I said. Then we work faster, Amanda replied. Michael called in the early afternoon, his voice tight with controlled fury. We have a problem. Rebecca's telling everyone I was in on it, that I helped you sabotage the wedding to steal her money. She's saying we were having an affair, that we planned this together. My business partners are asking questions. Clients are canceling meetings. The new narrative was even more damaging than the original. Rebecca had transformed Michael and me into co-conspirators, secret lovers who had orchestrated her humiliation for our own gain. Neither claim had any basis in reality, but reality mattered less than repetition, and Rebecca was repeating her lies to anyone who would listen. Michael's consulting firm ran on reputation. Client trust was everything. 2 clients had already canceled contracts. More were asking uncomfortable questions. She's destroying my livelihood because I wouldn't marry her, he said. I'm filing a defamation suit. My lawyer says we can combine our cases, show a pattern of malicious behavior. Do it, I said. The more evidence, the better. That afternoon, an email arrived from an unexpected source. The sender was Victoria Reyes. The subject line read, I worked with Rebecca. You need to know what she did. Victoria had worked with Rebecca at a marketing firm 4 years ago. They had been friends. Or so Victoria thought. I trusted her, she wrote. She had access to my desk, my purse, my passwords. Over 3 months, $3,000 disappeared from my checking account. When Victoria confronted Rebecca, the familiar pattern emerged. Tears, apologies, promises to pay back every cent. Rebecca claimed desperation, a difficult divorce, a child to feed. Victoria, compassionate and exhausted, agreed to a private settlement. No police, just a signed repayment agreement. She never paid $1, Victoria wrote. Not one. When I threatened legal action, she accused me of harassment. Said I was targeting her because she was a single mother. I dropped it. I was too exhausted to fight. I just wanted it over. Victoria had the settlement agreement, bank statements, Text messages where Rebecca admitted to borrowing the money. "I've been following your case," she wrote. "I saw her posts. She did the same thing to me. Exactly the same. I can testify. I have documentation. I've been waiting years for someone to stop her." Robert Reeves reviewed Victoria's evidence that evening. 4 victims now, he said, spreading the documentation across his conference table. You, David, Michael, and Victoria. Each one with documentation. Each one with the same pattern. He looked at me with something approaching satisfaction. This isn't just theft anymore. This is serial financial abuse. The pattern was devastatingly clear when laid out on paper. Step 1. Gain trust through emotional connection. Step 2. Obtain access to finances through shared accounts, authorized user status, or simple proximity. Step 3. Extract money gradually or all at once. Step 4. When caught, cry, blame, and threaten. Step 5. Rewrite history to become the victim, then repeat with the next target. The DA will love this, Robert said. Multiple victims, documented pattern, clear intent. Combined with her social media harassment, she's building her own prison. Every post, every lie, every accusation. It's all evidence. Just before 6 p.m., Robert's phone rang. He spoke briefly, then turned to me. That was opposing counsel. Patricia Hawkins, representing your sister. She wants to discuss a resolution. Rebecca's offer was predictable. She would repay $50,000, not the full amount, on a payment plan over 5 years. In exchange, I would drop all charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I would never be allowed to discuss the case publicly. No deal, I said without hesitation. She stole $92,000. She's offering $50,000 spread over 5 years, and she wants me to sign a gag order after spending a week publicly slandering me. Absolutely not. This goes to court. That night, after Robert had gone home and Amanda had finally fallen asleep, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. The message contained a photo attachment, a screenshot of an email supposedly sent from me to my supervisor 3 years ago. The subject line read, "Morrison account discrepancy," but the body text had been altered. Words added, context changed. It made me look like I had tried to cover up a major error rather than disclose it. Below the screenshot was a message. "Drop the charges or this goes to your entire company and the local news. You have 48 hours. It was signed with a single letter. R. I stared at the screen. The email was fake. I knew it was fake, but whoever received it wouldn't know that immediately. And in the time it took to prove it was forged, my career could be destroyed. Amanda appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" I showed her the phone. "She's not negotiating anymore. She's trying for mutually assured destruction." The Jefferson County Courthouse rose against a gray Monday sky, its stone facade imposing and final. I arrived at 8:15 with Robert Reeves and Amanda, walking past media vans that had gathered outside. The case had attracted local attention. Sister steals sister's savings, made for compelling headlines. Cameras clicked as we climbed the courthouse steps, and I kept my eyes forward, my face neutral, my heart pounding against my ribs. Robert had met with Rebecca's attorney at 7:00 that morning to discuss the promised guilty plea. Now, he turned to me in the corridor outside the courtroom, his expression grim. "She's not pleading guilty. She changed her mind this morning. We're going to trial. She claims she has new evidence that exonerates her." I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised. Rebecca always had another angle. What kind of evidence? Robert shook his head. Her attorney wouldn't say. But it doesn't matter. The evidence we have is overwhelming. Whatever she's planning, it won't work. Then, let's finish this. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, the American flag behind the judge's bench. The gallery was already filling with observers, reporters with notebooks, curious strangers drawn by the headlines, and faces I recognized. Amanda took a seat in the front row behind the prosecution table. Michael Anderson sat nearby, ready to testify. David Sullivan was there too, finally getting his day of validation after 3 years of being called a liar. Victoria Reyes clutched her purse nervously but held her ground. And in the back, separated by an invisible wall of tension, sat my parents. Together physically, but the fracture between them was visible even from across the room. Rebecca sat at the defense table with her attorney, Patricia Hawkins. I hadn't seen my sister since she stormed out of our parents' house with Sophie, and she looked diminished somehow, thinner, paler, the confident golden child replaced by someone I barely recognized. But she was dressed carefully in a soft pink blouse with modest jewelry, the image of a wronged woman. Performance mode. One last show. All rise. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the gallery. The Honorable Judge Patricia Lawson presiding. Judge Lawson entered with the weight of authority in every step. Mid-60s, silver-streaked hair, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and zero tolerance for courtroom theatrics. She took her seat and surveyed the room with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The prosecution may make its opening statement. Robert rose and approached the bench. Your Honor, this case is about systematic theft, fraud, and betrayal. The defendant, Rebecca Bennett, stole $92,000 from her own sister. She forged documents, manipulated vendors, and when caught, she attempted blackmail with fabricated evidence. This wasn't a desperate act born of momentary weakness. It was a calculated crime executed over weeks. The evidence will show a pattern of financial predation spanning years and multiple victims. We ask the court to hold the defendant fully accountable. Patricia Hawkins delivered the defense's opening with practiced smoothness. Your Honor, my client is not a criminal. She's a victim of family dysfunction. Sarah Bennett has controlled her family's finances for years. She promised to fund her sister's wedding, then withdrew that support to punish her for perceived slights. What my client did was desperate, yes, but it was born of betrayal, not greed. The prosecution will present numbers and documents. We will present context and humanity. My client made mistakes, but she is not the monster they're painting. I listened to the defense's version of reality and felt the familiar weight of being rewritten. In Rebecca's world, I was the controlling one, the punishing one, the villain. It was the same story she had told about David, about everyone who had ever tried to hold her accountable. The prosecution called its first witness. Thomas Reed, a senior fraud investigator from Mountain Bank, took the stand with a folder of documentation. He walked the court through the transaction records. 3 withdrawals over 1 week, $30,000, $35,000, $27,000, all unauthorized, all traced directly to an account in Rebecca's name. We also reviewed the access logs, Reed continued. The defendant attempted to access Ms. Sarah Bennett's savings account 5 times over the 2 months preceding the successful breach. 4 failed attempts before the final successful one. This was not impulsive behavior. This was systematic testing of security measures. Patricia Hawkins approached for cross-examination. Wasn't Rebecca Bennett listed as an authorized user on this account? Reed nodded. She was listed for emergency access with verbal restrictions communicated at the time of authorization. She was not authorized to drain the account. Hawkins pressed. But she had access? Reed's response was calm and devastating. Access is not authorization. I have access to the bank vault. That doesn't mean I can take what's inside. The second witness was Dr. Sarah Chen, a handwriting expert. She presented analysis of the guarantor signatures on the wedding vendor contracts. The signatures attributed to Sarah Bennett are inconsistent with her verified samples, Dr. Chen explained, pointing to enlarged images on a screen. Stroke patterns, pressure points, letter formations, all indicate forgery. She turned to another exhibit. Additionally, the email submitted by the defense as evidence of Ms. Sarah Bennett's alleged misconduct shows clear digital manipulation. Metadata timestamps don't match company records. Formatting is inconsistent with the employer's email system. This document was fabricated. I watched Rebecca's face as the forged email, her blackmail weapon, was exposed as another crime. Her composure flickered for just a moment before she smoothed it back into wounded innocence. David Sullivan took the stand next. He had waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of being dismissed as a bitter ex-husband making accusations. His voice was steady, despite the emotion visible in his eyes. "I was married to Rebecca for 3 years," he said. "During that time, she withdrew over $40,000 without my knowledge. When I discovered it and asked questions, she accused me of being financially abusive. I lost my reputation. I lost my credit. I lost primary custody of my daughter." He looked directly at Rebecca. "All because I asked where our money went." Robert guided him through the details. "How did the court view your claims about the missing money?" David's jaw tightened. "They didn't believe me. Rebecca cried on the stand, said I was controlling, that she was afraid of me. The judge saw a frightened woman and a man making accusations. I had bank statements. She had tears. Tears won. Victoria Reyes followed, her hands trembling but her voice clear. She described working with Rebecca, trusting her, then discovering $3,000 missing from her checking account. When I confronted her, she cried and promised to pay me back. She signed a settlement agreement, never honored it. When I pressed, she accused me of harassment. I dropped it. I was too exhausted to fight. 4 victims. Same method, same manipulation, same outcome. Judge Lawson's expression had grown increasingly grave as the pattern emerged. Rebecca took the stand for her own defense. Patricia Hawkins guided her through a carefully rehearsed narrative. Sarah was always the successful one, the favorite. I struggled my whole life while she had everything handed to her. When I got engaged, I asked for help. She promised to support me. Then she withdrew everything at the last second to punish me. The tears came on cue. I'm not a thief. I'm a single mother who made desperate choices. I was going to pay her back after the wedding. She didn't give me a chance. She went straight to the police, my own sister, my blood. Robert approached for cross-examination, and I watched my sister prepare for the performance of her life. Ms. Bennett, you testified you were going to pay your sister back. With what money? You have $28,000 in credit card debt. Rebecca hesitated. I would have figured it out. You also told your fiancé you had $40,000 in savings. Was that true? That was a misunderstanding. And the $200,000 inheritance from your grandmother that you used to convince him to co-sign a loan? Rebecca's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Your grandmother died 15 years ago and left nothing. You fabricated an inheritance to manipulate your fiancé. Patricia Hawkins objected. Judge Lawson overruled. The witness will answer. Something cracked in Rebecca's composure. I was just trying to build a life. Everyone else gets help. Why not me? Sarah had everything. A career, savings, a future. I had nothing. I deserved that money. The courtroom went silent. Rebecca realized too late what she had said. Not borrowed, not needed. Deserved. Entitlement laid bare for everyone to see. Robert pressed one final time. Ms. Bennett, our records show you searched how to access someone's bank account without them knowing 2 weeks before the first withdrawal. He displayed the search history on the courtroom screen. Does that sound like desperation or premeditation? Rebecca stared at the screen. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No tears now. No performance. Just a woman watching her last lie crumble to dust. The witness may step down. Judge Lawson's voice was neutral, but her eyes were not. Court will recess for deliberation. We'll reconvene tomorrow for verdict. As Rebecca walked past me, our eyes met. Her expression held no hatred, no anger, just recognition. She knew it was over. She had always known someone might stop her someday. She just never believed anyone actually would. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. I sat in the same courtroom, the same wooden bench, but the energy had shifted overnight. The gallery was fuller than before. Word had spread. Reporters filled the back rows, notebooks ready. Community members who had followed the case online came to witness its conclusion. The sister versus sister trial had become something larger than a family dispute. It had become a story people needed to see resolved. I had barely slept. Every possible outcome had played through my mind on an endless loop. What if the judge showed leniency? What if Rebecca somehow walked away from this? What if everything I had sacrificed, every relationship I had damaged, every bridge I had burned, was for nothing. Amanda sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "you did the right thing." I wanted to believe her. Rebecca sat at the defense table motionless, staring at nothing. There was no performance today, no carefully chosen outfit designed to project wounded innocence, just emptiness. She looked like someone who had already received a verdict she couldn't escape. "All rise." The bailiff's voice echoed through the chamber. Judge Patricia Lawson entered with the same commanding presence as before, a folder in her hands. Her face revealed nothing. "Please be seated. I'm prepared to deliver my ruling." The room held its breath. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation presented in this case. Judge Lawson's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The defendant, Rebecca Marie Bennett, faces charges of grand theft, fraud, forgery, and unauthorized account access. Additionally, evidence of attempted extortion has been entered into the record. She paused, looking directly at Rebecca. The evidence is overwhelming and unambiguous. The defendant systematically stole $92,000 from her sister through unauthorized withdrawals. She forged documents to defraud vendors. She fabricated an inheritance to manipulate her fiancé into co-signing a loan. And when confronted with the consequences of her actions, she attempted to blackmail the victim with forged evidence. Another pause. The courtroom was silent enough to hear breathing. This was not a desperate act born of momentary weakness. This was a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years and affecting multiple victims. Another pause. On the count of grand theft, the court finds the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of unauthorized account access, guilty. On the count of attempted extortion, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer blow. I watched Rebecca flinch with each guilty, 5 times in total. Her shoulders crumpled, her head dropped forward, hair falling to hide her face. A sound escaped her. Something raw and broken. Nothing like the theatrical sobbing she had deployed so many times before. This was the sound of someone watching their world end. Patricia Hawkins rose immediately. "Your Honor, we request leniency consideration. My client is a single mother with a young daughter who depends on her. She has no prior criminal record. This is her first offense. We ask the court to consider probation and community service in lieu of incarceration." Judge Lawson removed her reading glasses and looked at Rebecca with an expression that held no sympathy. "Miss Bennett, please stand." Rebecca rose on trembling legs. "Your attorney mentions this is your first offense. That is technically true." The judge's voice sharpened. "However, the evidence shows this is merely the first time you've been held accountable for your actions. You have victimized at least 4 people that we know of. The pattern suggests there are likely more. You have shown no genuine remorse throughout these proceedings, only regret at being caught. Your daughter deserves better than the example you have set." Rebecca's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face, but these were different from the tears she had used as weapons. These were real. "Given the severity and pattern of these offenses," the judge continued, "I am imposing the following sentence: 3 years probation with strict conditions. Full restitution to Sarah Bennett in the amount of $92,000. Additional restitution to Michael Anderson, David Sullivan, and Victoria Reyes, as determined by civil proceedings. 500 hours of community service to be completed within 18 months. Mandatory financial literacy and ethics counseling. Any violation of probation will result in immediate incarceration for up to 5 years." She leaned forward slightly. "Furthermore, the defendant will carry a felony conviction on her record. This will affect her employment, housing, and professional opportunities for the rest of her life. These are the natural consequences of the choices she made. Miss Bennett, if you appear in my courtroom again for any reason, I will not be lenient. You have been given a chance to rebuild your life honestly. I suggest you take it seriously." Rebecca nodded, the motion barely perceptible. Tears continued to fall silently. There were no words. What words could there possibly be? Court is adjourned. The gavel fell with a sound of finality that echoed through the chamber. It was over. I sat perfectly still as the reality settled into my bones. Robert put a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," he said. But I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhaustion. Years of fighting, years of being dismissed and overlooked and treated as a resource rather than a person, had finally been acknowledged, validated. The legal system had looked at the evidence and declared what I had always known. I was not the villain of this story. Amanda wiped tears from her face and wrapped me in a hug from behind. In the gallery, David Sullivan stood, his own face streaming with tears. 3 years of being called a liar, 3 years of being painted as an abuser, finally vindicated. Victoria Reyes nodded to herself, clutching her purse, finding closure for a wound she had carried in silence. Michael Anderson slipped out quietly, his own healing just beginning. I looked toward the back of the courtroom where my parents sat, frozen. Mom was crying openly, but I understood now that her tears weren't for Rebecca. They were for the family that had shattered, for the daughter she had failed, for decades of choices she couldn't undo. Dad stared at the floor, shoulders bowed with the weight of all the times he had chosen silence over courage. They didn't approach Rebecca. They didn't approach me. They just sat there, 2 people who had finally run out of ways to avoid the truth. As Rebecca was escorted to sign paperwork, she passed my table. She stopped for just a moment, not turning around. "I hope you're happy." The words were barely a whisper. Then she kept walking, and I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, Robert called with an update on the restitution proceedings. Rebecca's assets had been frozen and liquidated. Her car was sold, with proceeds going to the restitution fund. Bank accounts were garnished. The first payment arrived in my account that afternoon, $8,500 from the sale of Rebecca's possessions. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like receiving payment for a wound that would never fully heal. "Full restitution will take years," Robert explained. "Maybe a decade. She'll be making monthly payments for a long time. Wages garnished, tax refunds intercepted. She'll be paying for this for the rest of her working life. $92,000. That was the price my sister had put on our relationship. Less than that, actually. She hadn't even expected me to fight back. My parents appeared at my apartment door on a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after the verdict. They looked nervous, uncertain, standing on the threshold of a relationship they had damaged beyond easy repair. I let them in without a word. "We should have done this years ago." Mom's voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. "I created this, Sarah. I taught Rebecca that rules didn't apply to her, and I taught you that your job was to absorb whatever she did. Neither of those things was love. It was damage." Dad spoke next, each word costing him effort. "I should have protected you. Both of you. I let this happen because fighting was hard and silence was easy. That was cowardice. You paid for it." I looked at these people who had raised me, these flawed and imperfect humans who had somehow produced both Rebecca and me. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. "Not yet. Maybe not ever completely. But I can try to understand you. That's where we start." 3 months later, I stood before a small bungalow in Capitol Hill, watching my realtor unlock the front door. It wasn't the house I had originally saved for. That dream had been stolen and shattered and rebuilt into something different. This house was smaller, older, purchased with new savings I had accumulated since the trial, not with recovered funds still trickling in from Rebecca's garnished wages. "Ready to see it?" the realtor asked. I took the keys from her hand and stepped inside. This was my house, my new beginning, built on my own strength, not on recovered losses. My phone buzzed as I stood in the empty living room. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. "Congratulations on the house." "You deserve it. I mean that." The message was signed with a single letter, R. I stared at the screen for a long time. After everything, what did this mean? Was it genuine? Manipulation? A new angle? I didn't know. Maybe I would never know. But standing in my own home, I realized something that felt like freedom. My peace didn't depend on Rebecca's redemption. It never had. I closed the door on the old chapter and stepped into the next. 1 year later, I stood at my kitchen window, watching snow fall gently over Denver. December had arrived with the kind of quiet beauty that Colorado rarely sees. Soft white flakes drifting past the bay windows of my bungalow, settling on the front porch I had dreamed about for so long. The coffee maker hummed behind me, filling the kitchen with warmth. Christmas decorations hung modestly around the room. Nothing elaborate, just enough to make the space feel like home. My home. The one I had earned with my own strength after everything fell apart. I was 36 years old now, senior director of financial analysis at my firm. The promotion had come with a handwritten note from the CEO herself. Your integrity under pressure did not go unnoticed. We're proud to have you on our team. I had framed that note, not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me that choosing the hard right over the easy wrong had consequences. Good ones. The move to Denver had been my choice. My hometown held too many memories, too many places where I might run into echoes of the life I had dismantled. Here, I could build something new, something different, something mine. Amanda had followed me within 6 months. Someone has to make sure you actually take vacations, she said when she announced her transfer. We had dinner together every week now, hiked on weekends, and the friendship that had been forged in crisis had deepened into something unshakable. At my housewarming party, she had raised a glass and said, "You didn't just survive, Sarah. You became." I hadn't known how to respond. I still didn't, but I knew she was right. The volunteer work had started almost by accident. A colleague mentioned that the Colorado Coalition Against Financial Abuse was looking for speakers, people with first-hand experience who could help others recognize the warning signs. I made one phone call that turned into a workshop, then another, then a regular commitment. Now, I spent 2 Saturdays a month helping elderly victims understand how they had been exploited and how to protect themselves going forward. I knew the guilt they carried. I knew the manipulation tactics that had been used against them. And I knew better than most how hard it was to fight back against someone you loved. Last month, I had received a letter from Victoria Reyes. "Because of you," she wrote, "I finally reported what Rebecca did to me to the IRS. She owed back taxes on money she claimed she never received. They're investigating now. You started a chain reaction. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be." I had read that letter 3 times. Then I had put it in a folder with David's thank you note and Michael's email expressing gratitude for helping him see the truth. A chain reaction. I had never thought of it that way. But maybe that was the point. One person standing up gave others permission to do the same. My parents and I had found something new over the past year. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but understanding. We had monthly video calls now, scheduled and boundaried and real. They had visited Denver in October, staying at a hotel because that was my boundary, and they respected it. Mom had joined a support group for parents of adults with personality disorders. "I'm learning how I enabled her," she told me during one of our calls. "It's painful, but necessary." Dad had started therapy for the first time at 68 years old. "I'm learning to say what I feel instead of staying quiet," he said. I could see them trying. That mattered. When Mom asked if I would come home for Christmas, her voice held none of the old demands, none of the guilt-laden expectations. "Only if you want to," she said. "We understand if you need more time." I had considered for a long time before answering. Then I said, "Yes, but I'm bringing Amanda and we're staying at a hotel." Her response had surprised me. "Whatever you need. We're just glad you're coming." Small steps, but steps. Sophie remained the bright spot in everything. David had full custody now, awarded after Rebecca's conviction made clear that she couldn't provide a stable home. I still talked to my niece every month through video calls. She was 8 years old now, growing fast, curious about everything, resilient in ways that gave me hope. "Aunt Sarah, when can I visit your new house?" "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon." Last summer, Sophie had spent a week with me in Denver. We had baked cookies together, visited the Science Museum, read books every night before bed. One evening, unprompted, she looked up at me with her mother's eyes and said, "Aunt Sarah, I'm glad you're not mad at me.